to change things up a little bit because we're about to do percent increase and my face just increased. Good luck.
All right, welcome back to YouTube with Lubelski. We're going to be diving into percent of increase and decrease. I highly recommend that you watch the other YouTube video about how to find percentage of a number first, because that's really a basis for this percent of increase or decrease. So for step one, you're always going to identify, are we increasing or decreasing? And so for step one, check whether it is going up, which is an increase, or down. Now, what do I mean by that? It says find the percent change from 688 quarts to 172 quarts. So I'm going from 688 to 172. So I know that this is a decrease of, and now we've got to find the percentage. So the next thing we do, step two, find the difference of the two numbers. Now, difference means subtraction. So even though sometimes you're going to be increasing, you still have to subtract the two numbers. So I'm going to take my larger number, 688, and I'm going to subtract 172. I get 516. Now we have to figure out, how do I compare this to something? Well, if I went, 516 is our part. Step three is put the part over the original. And what that means is I'm going to take my part, which is 516, and I'm going to make it into a fraction over the original number, which was 688. Now we want to know what the percent of change is. And we've learned that percent is some amount out of 100. So we're still going to be using that same process of cross products, but we just have to know how to set up the problem. So step four is setting it. So set it equal to x over 100. Step five, complete cross products. So those are our notes. Make sure that you take those because that's going to be walking you through step by step. And so now let's go ahead and let's do our cross products. So 516 times 100 is 51,600. And that'll be equal to 688 times x. Now to get rid of that, I am going to use a calculator because again, this isn't about whether or not you have the ability to multiply and divide large numbers. It's about, do you know how to find the percent increase or decrease? So to get rid of that coefficient, we're going to divide by 688 on both sides. I know my stuff is a little cramped right now. We'll have more space in future questions. So 51,600 divided by 688 in my calculator, I get a percent decrease of x equals 75. So it's a decrease of 75%. All right, let's follow those same things. So for question two, step one, identify whether it's an increase or decrease. So I'm going from 160 to 404. That's getting larger, so I know that this is going to be an increase. But how much? So step two, find the difference between the two numbers. So take my larger 404 minus 160. And I get 244. Step three is we're going to put the part over the original. So 244 was the increase. out of a total of out of a total of 160, you put it over the original amount, which was 160. Then you set it equal to x over 100 because we're trying to find some amount out of 100, which is a percentage. And we're going to implement cross products. So 160 times x is 160x. That will be equal to 244 times 100, which is 24,400. To get rid of my coefficient of 160, I'm going to divide both sides by 160. And I'm left with x equals 24,400 divided by 160. 150, woo, I'm having issues writing today. 152.5. Now that means that we had an increase of 152.5%. Now, some people say, Mrs. Lubelski, can you have greater than 100%? Absolutely. So think about it. One whole is 100%. Well, what if I decide, like in this situation, it's cups. So maybe I'm making a recipe. So if I have 1 cup of flour and I'm using 3 cups of flour, that's 3 times as much. So that's not just 100%, that's 300% of the original recipe. So yes, you can have larger than 100%, so don't let that throw you off. Let's go ahead and do our next one. We're going to do this a little bit faster this time because we know our steps at this point, I hope, or at least you have it on your paper to reference. First step, we're going to check from 800 to 550. That is going to be a decrease because the number got smaller. But what is it a decrease of? Step 2, we're going to find the difference. So 800 minus 550, we changed by 250 ounces. So I'm going to take my difference and I'm going to put it over a fraction of the original because I'm trying to find what is 250 out of 800 as a percentage. So that's why we're doing this as a ratio. We're comparing it. So I don't want it out of 800 though. I want it out of how much out of 100%. Now some of you might notice that if I divide 800 by 8, I can get 100, which means I could do the same thing. 250 divided by 8 would give me my x. Cross products is not the only answer. Cross products is just one of the possibilities that you can do, but it's not the only one that exists. So whatever you feel comfortable with is totally fine. So this means that x equals 31 and 25/100ths. So that means that there was a decrease of 31 and 25/100%. All right. Number 5, percent change from 3,690 feet to 31,365 feet. So maybe this is an airplane and we're trying to find how we're going up in an airplane and what percentage. So if 100% is 3,690, then we're trying to figure out how high up, what percentage would 31,000 be, and that's huge. So let's find the step 1 is we're going from a small number to a big number. So that's an increase. Ooh, kid's sleepy. Increase of what though? So step 1 or 2, find the difference. So I'm going to take 31,365 and I'm going to subtract 3,690. All right, that equals 27,675. Now be careful because when we make our ratio, we need to compare the difference, which is 27,675, compared to the original starting point, which was 3,690. Even though that numerator is way larger than the denominator in this ratio, that's okay. So we don't care about those numbers though. I mean, we'll use them, but what we want to know is how much of an increase was that based on percentage. So again, with the cross products, we're going to do 3,690 times x. So that's 3,690 times x. It's going to be equal. Ooh, my paper just glitched. Uh-oh. there it is. All right, so 3,690x equals 27,675. Oh, times 100. Ooh, add those zeros. Sorry about that. So that's actually 2,767,500. It really is getting late. And then I'm going to get rid of the coefficient by dividing both sides by 3,690. And yes, these are very large numbers, which is why a lot of times you are doing these with a calculator, because for time's sake, it is going to take too much time to try and divide these out longhand. I've got a cranky husky in this room. All right, that means that x is equal to 750, which means whatever situation this was had an increase of 750% of where it started originally. All right, I want you to pause the video and I want you to try number 5 on your... All right, so for question 5, we had a decrease of 87.5%. Hopefully you were able to follow those steps that we created up at the top of the page to find that decrease of 87.5%. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the word problems at the bottom of the page. So I am going to walk you through these word problems. So we're going to read through this, and whenever I do a word problem, I always like to make sure that I circle numbers and underline key phrases that'll help me with this. And so in this question, it says, Louise is preparing a raised bed vegetable garden for spring. So a vegetable garden, so a raised bed and a vegetable garden, those are things that some people might not know what that means. And what it means is that you're going to take 4 pieces of wood and you're going to make a flower bed out of it to make it a little bit higher off the ground so that animals can't get to it, or maybe you are keeping it off the ground because you live in the city, but it is boxing in soil so that you can plant a garden like this garden here where you've got lettuce and tomato and carrots and peas, and I think those might be what are those, strawberries? Oh no, those are beets. Sorry, lost my focus there. It's a nice picture though. So just a little background knowledge, she's going to put a bunch of soil in there to grow vegetables. So it says she uses 400 pounds of topsoil initially. Then it says she uses an additional 580 pounds of topsoil to raise the height of the bed. It says find the increase in percentage of the quantity of soil used to make the vegetable garden. So this is kind of cool because they actually gave us one of our pieces of information already. They want to know what is the percent change. Well, they told us they raised it up 580 additional pounds of soil out of the 400 that they started with. So that's our first ratio. We don't even have to find the difference between anything because the word problem actually told us an additional 580. So that already tells me that it's an increase of soil. But how much? So what we're going to do is we're going to compare this to some amount out of 100, because that's what we do to find a percentage, is we have to find how much would it be if it was just 100. And in this case, 400 to 100, it's a pretty easy common divisor of 4. So that means I can also divide the top number by 4 to find my answer. And so my calculator, I'm going to do 580 divided by 4. And that means that it was 145. So what does that mean? There was an increase of 145%. So not only did we increase 100%, so not only did we add another 400, we added another 400 or 45% on top of that. So 145% more soil than what we started with. Number 7 says Ben travels the long distance of 80 miles to reach his office. I think that's a word. I think that's a little mix up. Today he used an alternative route that covered a distance of only 75 miles. What is the decrease in the percentage of the distance traveled by Ben? So they flat out told us what is the decrease. So I already know it's going to be a decrease of something. So I'm going to find the difference. So I'm going to do 80 minus 75. it was 5 less miles. So I'm going to compare 5 to the original amount of 80 miles, but I don't want it out of 80. We want a percentage, which is always out of 100. And so this isn't an easy common multiplier, so I'm going to multiply on the diagonal for my cross products. 5 times 100 is 500. 80 times x is 80x. To get rid of that coefficient, I'm going to divide both sides by 80. And that leaves me with x equals, in our calculator, 500 divided by 80, leaves me with 6 25/100ths, which means that there was a decrease of 6.25% of mileage. So he drove 6.25% less than he normally does to get to his office. I know that these are really long problems. I know that they're challenging, but remember, memorize your step-by-step of how do I find the difference as a percentage, just identifying that difference between the two numbers, finding and writing down the difference over the original number, comparing it to a fraction out of 100, and then using cross products or common multipliers to find that missing piece. If you need any help, don't hesitate to ask me if I'm your teacher. And if I'm not your teacher, then hopefully you have somebody in your life that can help you out with this and kind of explain it to you, or even watch the video with somebody so that they can try and explain it to you. And that goes for my students too. Let your parents watch the video and maybe they can understand it a little bit better and explain it to you, because I know that Mrs. Lubelski doesn't always explain it a perfect way. But hopefully this helps.
We also did percent decrease in this video, so I thought I'd decrease my face